lots of issues around it, and we won't have enough time to talk about it. But we're working very closely with the central bank to try and improve liquidity in that whole value chain, just so that we're able to ensure that it remains a viable business and more investments, private investments, can come into the sector. I think the Honourable Minister has already mentioned special economic zones, which we intend as part of our infrastructural development. Rail and roads are critical. Rail in the current budget and the 2017 budget will be putting substantial resources, of course, into the building of the standard gauge rail from Lagos to Kano and the Lagos to Calabar rail. The Lagos to Kano single gauge, the narrow gauge rail, is already being concessioned to General Electric, and we're looking at a substantial investment of close to $2 billion in that particular narrow gauge rail. The whole idea, of course, is to be able to produce what is possibly the most commercially viable means of transporting goods from one point to the other. Of course, these rail projects start from the seaport all the way to the hinterland, and it's absolutely important that we're able to complete some of these projects as quickly as possible. But we think that in the interim, the Lagos-Kano narrow gauge, which will be concessioned, and the concessionaire will provide the rolling stock, the signages, and all of the other services necessary to run that rail service. We think we'll be able to provide a viable alternative to transporting heavy goods and services by road. Of course, there are several industrial policies. I'm sure you'll be looking at many of them as we go along. But there are complaints about some of the tariffs and all that, and we're addressing so many of them. Of course, I'm sure many, especially those in the pharmaceutical sector, there's a complaint about the classification of certain finished goods. So there are certain finished pharmaceutical products that have only a 5% tariff. So it makes it easier to import finished pharmaceutical products than to produce them locally. Now that's a wrong classification, and that wrong classification has led to this paradox. So what we're trying to do, of course, is to change the classification and redress some of these problems. So we're working very closely, and the Honourable Minister for Industry, Trade and Investment and his team are working very closely on this issue of tariffs and looking at how we can use the tariff structures to incentivize local production and, as much as possible, discourage imports of those things that we can produce locally. Agriculture, of course, is critical in all of our efforts, but we all know that we have a productivity challenge in agriculture. We're not even at the moment meeting domestic food requirements, and that is on account of the fact that we have an input system and a farming model that are largely inefficient. We don't have enough seeds, especially improved seedlings. We have an inefficient system of distribution of fertilizers, irrigation problems, etc. But despite that, this season, where for most of the farming areas there's a bumper harvest. But there is so much more that we can do, so much more that can be done, and that's why we're looking at improving all of the entire value chain. Of course, our inability to export at levels required for market success is another drawback in agriculture. We simply need to export more, but the problems are the ones we're working on at the moment. We need to enforce food quality standards. We need better knowledge of target markets. We need to improve our inspectorate system. The Federal Ministry of Agriculture, we need to improve the inspectorate system there. And then, of course, coordination amongst the agencies. Again, there are investments and innovations in the area of technology that are crucial to this diversification effort. We are building at the moment 6 innovation hubs in the 6 geopolitical zones, with 2 super hubs, one in Lagos and one in Abuja. That basically is to provide opportunity, especially for young people who are looking at investments in technology. For those who might have followed some of the stories, we had in Abuja the Aso Villa Demo Day, which basically was an attempt to bring together young people in technology who have innovative ideas and who are trying to develop those ideas. It was a competition across the country, about 4,000 entries. Eventually we narrowed down to about 30, and the 30 best visited the president at the villa, and he had an opportunity to speak to them and look at some of their innovations. We are we're going to sponsor some of those innovations. We're going to invest in some of those innovations in order to encourage these young people. But technology is certainly going to be key going forward. We absolutely have no choice but to significantly increase our funding for technology and technology-related industry. When you look at what we can invest, when you look at the entire budget, and our budget this last year was a little over 6 trillion. Now, 6 trillion compared to an economy this size and the numbers that we have is still a small amount of money. And that's the reason why we believe that the only way to really ramp up in very, very quickly the size of our economy, and of course that means the size of our budget and what we're able to spend and invest, is by partnering with private capital and development capital. In fact, our 2017 budget is premised on substantial private capital and development capital coming into the mix, because we very strongly believe that even just encouraging game-changing private sector projects will make a huge difference in what we're able to deliver as an economy. For example, there's a private sector company that is developing a refinery. The refinery will be able to produce will be able to refine 650,000 barrels a day. Now that's more than all of the existing refineries put together. So if we encourage that private sector operator to produce, to finish that refinery and be able to produce 650,000 and be able to refine, 650,000 barrels a day, that will certainly be a game changer. Because if we're able to refine all of our PMS and other petroleum products locally, we'll be saving 30% of what we are spending currently from our foreign exchange reserves. So clearly, just encouraging private sector participation alone will dramatically increase what it is that we're able to deliver overall as an economy. I just leave it there. I'm sure there's so many issues that you'll be looking at. There will be a lot of talk on ease of doing business. I'm sure that already you are familiar with the fact that we have the president just inaugurated a commission on ease of doing business, and that commission is going to work very closely with the state governments, because of course the state governments will be the major participants in engaging the private sector. Most of the land approvals, building approvals, and several other approvals for doing business will come from the states. So the major challenge for us will be how the federal government and the states can work together to make business easier for those who would want to invest in this country. And I think that for a change, we need to really focus our attention on making it easier to do business, both locally and for those who will be investing from other parts of the world. So finally, I'd like to just commend all of the participants at this 8th meeting of the National Council of Industry, Trade and Investment for undertaking this important national discourse on how to diversify the Nigerian economy away from dependence on oil. I certainly look forward to the conclusions of the conversations you'll be having and the important recommendations that you'll produce. It is therefore my special pleasure and privilege to declare open the 8th